In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? A convention when referring to a media text is a way in which something is usually done. For example, a typical romance genre will include sexuality, status, gender, and relationships. I believe I challenge conventions that exist in media products, as when creating my A2 film I feel it was more postmodern than pastiche, as instead of imitating existing conventions and styles, I feel as if I was mixing these styles and conventions more to create something new. By doing this, I was able to present more skills and creativity. In a scene where both characters are arguing, I've used a convention I was familiar with the previous year from film noir, editing the scene to a black and white. However, this year I used the chroma key tool to highlight specific colours. This is effective because the dull colours mirror the mood of the scene being unhappy, however the visible colours that there is highlight that there's still hope and not all is lost for the character. These dull scenes and the low-key lighting scenes present the audience with the horror and psycho elements of my film, whereas the fast scenes that show the happy couple present the audience with the romance element of my film. The juxtaposition of these different scenes and elements highlight the psychological factor of my film. Another aspect of my film where I've challenged conventions is my narrative. I wanted to make my narrative creative and also have an open meaning to the audience. Therefore, instead of conventionally using an open or closed narrative, I started the film with what looked like a problem, a boy mourning over the death of his partner. However, as the film develops, the dead girlfriend turns out to be the mentally unstable and the audience are left to decide for themselves whether she is alive or not. However, by doing this, I have also stuck to some conventions of postmodernism. Postmodernism texts are open to interpretation. This is something I believe my film allows the audience to do. I felt this would keep the audience interested. I wanted to take on the role of an active audience. This is when the audience are seen as more than passive observers. They're seen more as individuals who are gauging specifically with text and drawing out what they wish. What have you learned from your audience feedback? To conduct my audience feedback, I use Web 2.0 tool SurveyMonkey. This allowed me to create a survey which my audience could interactively fill out and give me the answers that I needed. SurveyMonkey, I found, was more efficient than handing out paper surveys, as it allowed me to collect feedback from people within different age groups easier, as I was able to send the survey via email and also post it on social media sites such as Facebook. This also made it easier for people to fill out the survey, as they could take as much time as they wanted. Therefore, I found the answers were more detailed than the answers I would have received from a paper survey. The questions I asked consisted of things such as, do you know what postmodernism is? And list 3 of your favourite film genres. From this, I learnt that my audience would not like a film that heavily relied on the music and there being no speech. However, they did say that they liked the idea of a non-linear narrative as it was more interesting. Initially, I did not want to include a script for my film, as I thought without it, it would make my audience have to think a bit more about the storyline. However, the feedback I received showed that the audience would like a film that involved some dialogue. Therefore, to please my audience, I have included a short monologue that still remains quite mysterious, portraying the character's psychological state and also helping the audience understand what is happening inside the character's head. One of the main factors that stood out the most for me from my survey was age. I discovered that older people did not really understand what a postmodern text is, and they did not seem too keen on the idea of an unusual storyline, whereas younger people were more keen on the idea of having to think independently and not be a passive audience. Furthermore, it seemed that younger people were also more interested in the concept of reading between the lines of films, which is a factor my film highlights. For these reasons, I was inclined to target a younger audience, ranging from 16 to early 20s, as I felt this group would appreciate my film the most, as well as finding it more engaging than older individuals, who I feel are not so open to the modern media creations. Throughout my editing process, I have managed to get feedback from my fellow peers to see their opinions on how I can improve my film and what they like already. This was helpful as it allowed me to pinpoint what the positives were but focus on the scenes which required adjustments. A comment that was made was focused on the sound and how I could add sound layering. I took this comment on board and decided to layer the sound of the mental breakdown scene by adding in a foregrounded sound of an ambulance to highlight the psychological state of my character and to foreshadow the murder she commits in the film. I feel that sound is an important aspect of my film and therefore wanted to put these comments made into play. How effective is the combination of your main product and auxiliary text? My auxiliary text consisted of creating a poster and a film review for my film. I wanted to ensure that these texts complemented my overall film. First of all, I worked on my poster, taking in the fact that the main concept of my film revolves around the dark theme of the delusional mindset of a young teenage girl. I wanted my poster to emphasise this dark theme, therefore I took a number of different photographs of Eva, the majority of them focusing on the face and using mise-en-scène to create the overall horror look I was aiming for. Using Rembrandt-style side lighting, this is where only one side of the face is illuminated. In the aspect of my film, this shows that the girl has two different personalities. By doing this, I was able to make my poster and image more creative. In order to emphasise the fact that this character suffers from a split personality disorder, I placed another portrait photograph on the main face, which was already on the poster. I changed the opacity of this image and blurred the edges to make it more subtle. I also did this with a further 2 images, which were placed on the side of the main image. The overall look of my poster was creepy and gave off an eerie vibe. This relates to the overall theme of my film. Despite the many creepy and dark scenes presented in my film, there is a factor of my film which presents the character in a romantic montage. I wanted to bring the aspect out in my film review. Alongside the main poster image, which is rather dark, I wanted to create an image which did present the relationship side of my film. I also wanted the webpage to appeal to the same target audience as my short film does. Therefore, I went for a modern look with bright colours and interactive pages where the audience can view other short films as well as watch my own. From doing this, I was able to present my main media product within other aspects of my coursework. How did you use new media technologies in the construction and research, planning and evaluation stages? In terms of my research and planning, I used a variety of technology and software in order to be creative and keep track of my resources in an interesting way. In particular, I use Web 2.0 tools such as SlideShare, Prezi, MindMaple, Scribed and AuthorStream. Using these sites, I created small presentations and embedded them onto my blog. I was able to use Scribed, for example, to present my research, which was initially written on Microsoft Word. So that I can embed this on my blog, I uploaded the document to Scribed and then copied the link onto a post. Any research which I was unable to embed, I used QuickTime to screen record and then uploaded it to YouTube. I then embedded this video onto my blog. One particular tool I found engaging was Powtoon. This allowed me to create presentations which included animations to present the information in a more fun and engaging way. Photoshop was used to create my poster. I found it was complicated to use at first, but I was up for the challenge as I wanted to create a poster that showed off many skills and also looked professional. This was different and arguably less simple than the editing software Fireworks, which I used last year. In terms of film construction, I used Final Cut Express. Final Cut exposed me to a huge range of tools, including video transitions and sound manipulation. The many effects allowed me to be as creative as I could. Particular effects I found I was fond of included bad TV, speed modification and colour correction. All 3 of these allowed me to adapt certain scenes. For example, bad TV was used on the last final scene of a happy scene between the couple. The use of this effect presented to the audience that something wasn't quite right and hopefully allowed them to come to terms with the fact that the happy scenes were created in her mind and bad TV was the showing of these fantasies breaking down, demonstrating my character's fragile state of mind. Finally, my evaluation was also created on Final Cut. However, I recorded all my audio using Voice Memo app on my phone and Apple iPhone 5. I found this was most effective when using headphones with a microphone to create clarity in my voice. I added in screen recordings and the use of Web 2.0 tools over the top of my voice so that the viewer can be taken step by step visually with what I'm explaining verbally.